Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Stansberry. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for the Division of Student Affairs and a two-time alum here of East Carolina University. And I am honored to serve as the moderator for the next part of this very important conversation. This is the third installment of our special summer and virtual Cupola Conversations. We continue to hear Pirate Nation loudly and clearly the conversation about systemic racism, inequity. It must not stop here. It must continue. We must continue the dialogue and identify steps in which we can have impactful and lasting change. The previous cupolas that we held in June, we started with influencing change and breaking down barriers. Today, ECU students and student leaders are the focal point with driving out darkness, students empowering students. Just historically, Cupola Conversations got started under the ECU United initiative back in 2016, launched by then SGA Vice President Janae Brown, who basically stood up and said, you know, there's a lot of hurt in the world. There's a lot of things that are broken and going in the wrong direction. And she said at that time, we can't fix the entire world without starting with our own backyard, without our own campus being the focus. And so let's start with the ECU. Let's start with becoming one ECU United campus. And so I would encourage you, as you're watching for our attendees, check out the ECU United website. You'll find out more than a dozen programs now since that 2016 launch fall under the ECU United umbrella. In short, ECU United is about one student, one staff member, one faculty member standing together and making our campus better. Right now, we're going to carry our empowered message to the world after that and make meaningful change. I think that's the whole part. So some ground rules for today. Ideally, we would be doing this in person, but the conversations are far too important for us to wait a few weeks until we get back into the fall. So we're going to go at this virtually, maybe a little clunky at times. There may be some delays in audio. We may forget to turn our microphone on and off once in a while. So just bear with us and we'll do the best we can and roll through this conversation. The format, I have several questions that have been submitted by students and student leaders that we're going to start with and throw to our panelists. We also encourage you that are watching today. If you see the icon, it looks like two kind of speech bubbles that have question marks in them as a Q&A chat. If you have a question that you would like to ask the panelists, feel free to put that in there. And we've got folks, student affairs professionals that are monitoring that and will feed those questions to me and I will feed them to the panelists. Just be aware, the panelists cannot see your questions coming in. So if you're trying to get to them directly, just send it in and we'll try and get the questions forwarded through that way. Also, if you're watching today, we've got your audio and video are muted and not showing so that we avoid the noise and background and everything else and we can have good conversation with our panelists. Again, use that Q&A bubble for that and we'll continue the conversation. We do have a great panel of students today in the conversation. A lot of them have already done great things as pirates and now as student leaders are really ready to take the bull by the horns and run this thing forward in many different ways. And I'm proud to know a few of them and getting to know a few of them even better. In this conversation, I hope will let some of our Pirate Nation understand we've really got some great students that are taking charge in this university. We've got Lila El-Halabi with SAB. We've got AJ Modlin with the Ambassadors, Tyrell Govan with BSU, Zoe Lucas from Pirate Media, really happy to have media on board, and Tucker Robbins with SGA. So let's get going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have them introduce themselves with the first question, and then after they introduce themselves and tell us who they're affiliated with, in about 30 or 45 seconds, panelists, and I'm going to start with Tyrell on this. What was your initial reaction when the marches and protests happened following the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and too many other students, too many other African Americans across the world in 2020? Your initial reaction, and then in the weeks since then, has it changed at all? Have your feelings changed? So Tyrell, we'll start with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyrell, and I am the president of the Black Student Union. My initial reaction, I was kind of split. Part of me was angry and frustrated because it's sad that, you know, this has happened so many times, you know, to Black people. We've had so many movements for this, and it's kind of draining that we're still fighting, like we're still, you know, working against systemic racism. And part of me was hopeful because, you know, while we've been doing this for years and years, like I feel like for the first time in a long time, people aren't letting up. You know, it's one of the biggest you know, civil rights movements in a long time. So, you know, I'm really proud to see like so many people, you know, speaking up. I'm seeing so many people, actually join us too. Like I'm seeing so many allies, supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, and I really, appreciate that. But now, the media coverage of these protests, because they're still happening. Like they're not done with. Like protests are still happening all over the country, but we're not seeing as much of it. And I wish we would see as much of it, because I feel like the message is slowly deteriorating because the media isn't putting out these strong messages. It's a lot being done. There's a lot of symbolic, things happening, such as statues being taken down, statues being put up, street signs being changed. But I don't. That's not the purpose for these marches. The purpose for these marches is, to bring justice to these people that's, losing their lives at the hands of police brutality and systemic racism. So, I mean, until that happens, we're going to continue seeing these marches all over the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrell. Lila?
Hi, I'm Lila El Halabi. I'm the Student Activities Board President. So initially, when I found out about the protest and the murder of George Floyd, it definitely empowered a lot of people to speak up and educate themselves. So it was definitely a great time to see everyone come together and work together. I feel like now it's kind of sad the way the media is portrayed or stopped portraying the protest. And kind of just generally kind of the progressive movement that everyone is making. And you only see that through social media, but throughout the news, you see the negative aspects of everything that's been happening.
Thank you, Lila. Appreciate that. Tucker?
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Tucker Robbins. I'm the president of the Student Government Association here at ECU. First off, with regarding the question, I think that we can all agree that what happened to George Floyd and so many others was just a tragic, horrible event that I don't know of anyone that could even agree to saying that that was acceptable what happened. So I think that that's important to obviously throw out there. My initial reaction, I think freedom of speech is something that everyone should express. Express the movement that's going on across the world, across the country. But I do think there is a difference between protesting peacefully and rioting and looting and destroying businesses that had nothing to do with the death of George Floyd and so many others. So I think it's important to kind of draw that line between those two. Obviously, East Carolina wants you to go out and promote free speech, and I want you to. I think everybody wants you to. But there is a right and wrong way to do that, and destroying businesses and things of that nature, I don't think is it. I think it's also important to just kind of lay out there that there's nothing that we can do to bring these people back with us. But the only thing that I think we can do, there's several things, but one of the most important, I think, is that we can only strive to be the influencer of change here at East Carolina. Engaging in these conversations, keeping these conversations going. Don't let it die out. I think when we return back to campus, you're seeing your friends that you haven't seen all summer. I think using our virtual technology these days and having conversations such as these will help when you come back and see, all the people of Pirate Nation face to face in the classrooms, your professors, ECU police, Greenville police. So I think just continuing this conversation and, being a part of this movement to bring justice to what's happened and things of that nature. So thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Zoe?
Hi, everybody. I'm Zoe. I am speaking, I'm with the Pirate Media One, and I am the general manager of the magazine division. So I'm speaking kind of on behalf of them today, but also on behalf of my own thoughts. And I have to say that when I first found out about all the protests and everything going on, so many different emotions. First you're sad to hear it. It's just a sad thing in general. And then maybe a little stressful and anger at times. But I think truthfully, just really hopeful. I'm in full support of Black Lives Matter. And honestly, just everything in general. And I think this movement is finally, hopefully, going to be heard this time around. And I think as tiring as it can be, just the more we keep talking about it, peacefully protesting, sharing stories, and honestly just changing ourselves. I know there's been so many different posts online or on media of just one's own interactions and how they have realized that maybe they should act differently or speak differently, or maybe something that they didn't even realize was a problem, and they're now becoming more just understanding and seeing it in someone else's viewpoint. And I think that is definitely needed. And I think change is change, and it's going to help and be beneficial in one way. So definitely, I would say now, continually, I'm continuously hopeful and excited to see all the change. I just wanted to keep going, and I think that's something that we can bring to campus this upcoming school year, and just continue to help that change flourish and come in any way that it's going to come. And then hopefully this movement will also help others. I know since Black Lives Matter now, where I'm seeing so many different posts on social media of Black LGBTQ Lives Matter, and so many different other people that might be affiliated that have always kind of been pushed in the corner before. And I think it's really important to hear all these stories and try to first start with yourself, and then start with your community, and then just keep going broader and broader until we can just make a change for everybody.
Thank you, Zoe. AJ?
Yes. Hello, my name is AJ Maudlin. I am the president of Ecu Ambassadors. My first reaction would have to be that personally, I was scared, okay? As half Black and half white, it worries me, because how do I know that my stepdad, who is Black, or my uncle, who is Black, will make it home each day, afraid that they might be pulled over and something happens to them? And, you know, George Floyd and many others have lost their lives due to this issue. And, you know, it's just, I ask myself, how many more African-American males or females have to die at the hands of police before people realize that this needs to stop? As we look at today, I've started using this new term of innovative thinking, and it's something that I really am pushing for. So we need to look for new ways that we can hold the police or anyone else who is abusing someone else, especially the police and some of these point of views. How do we hold them accountable for what they've done?
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, everybody, for that, for their introductions and that first question. I know it's really tough to kind of process in the moment, and it's even difficult to process as we go forward with what do we do next. And we are starting to get a couple of questions coming in, and that I'm going to come to those in just a second. Remember, if you're watching, we've got more than 100 folks that are watching the program right now. Go to that box in the top or on your screen that has the question mark, and you can add questions in there, and we'll pass them along to the panelists. So I want to start with you, Tucker, on this question, but I'm open to anybody that has been involved in that as we go through the summer. As we talk about this and processing and going forward, what conversations have you had with your groups, Tucker with SGA, and again with any of the others? What conversations are you having this summer about how you will take this into the fall, and maybe sharing, you know, what's the hot topic or hot discussion within your conversations right now? Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Stansberry. I appreciate that. Student government has been super busy this summer. Being completely honest, we have a group of our executive cabinet that works all throughout the summer, and just about every one of our weekly cabinet meetings have been something revolving around this movement on our campus and, you know, striving for change. One thing that we did was, you know, we released an open letter to the student body. We also have formed a caucus, which is kind of a non-standing committee of individuals within our student assembly that have come together to hear out and understand minority voices on our campus, and kind of align with also our equity and intercultural engagement committee to make sure that we're hearing these minority voices, understanding them, and how can we better support them as their elected representatives. That's a couple things that we've done there. We've also partnered with the Counseling Center to fund their after-hours crisis hotline for students that may be in mental health needs after normal business hours and don't have anyone to run to. That specific hotline was the Counseling Center was kind of seeking, trying to find a way to keep funding that because they've seen such a rise in ECU students that don't have the help they need after business hours. So we have partnered with them, and we are going to completely fund that for all ECU students. And there will be some more formal, advertising for that as we go along before I return to campus. But overall, I mean, the conversations between our executive cabinet have all been revolving around how can we support these minority student voices on our campus and different ways that we can help as student leaders on our campus. So I would say, I mean, just about every single meeting of our summer has been revolving around this and how we can support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. I appreciate that. Any other folks want to mention? All right, Tyrell, do you want to jump in there and share a little bit about what BSU or maybe others that you've talked with have had to say about the summer going into the fall?
Yeah, I've been, talking with my e-board, talking to, my peers, and of course, within these groups, we're not letting this conversation die. Like this is a recurring conversation that, we bring up, almost all the time we talk. So, and I feel like as the Black Student Union, we especially, should ensure that these conversations don't die out, especially going into the fall, because, you look at these past movements before, they tend to die out after, a couple of months, people stop talking about it, the hashtags go away. So, me, BSU, I've actually been in conversation with BSUs from across the state, PWIs such as UNCW, Duke, UNC Charlotte. And right now we're in the process of forming the Black Coalition, to unite the Black Student Unions from PWIs from across the state. So, the biggest thing with that, it will bring together not only the Black students here at ECU, but Black students, in colleges all across the state. So right now we're just, doing the best we can because, the bigger the voice we have, the bigger the impact. So that's one of the main things I've been working on this summer. We've been meeting every week. We're getting things started up. We're trying to get things going like as soon as possible. And as far as, this fall, we're just going to do everything we can, as much as we can to just, make our presence known on this campus, because I feel like our presence isn't as known as it should be. So that's basically our main focus for the fall. But thank you.
Thank you, Tyrell. And I want to do a quick follow-up, and I'm going to come to somebody else first, but then I want to come back to Tyrell on that, because he brought up an interesting point. He's talking about a coalition with other schools, and he said PWI for those predominantly white institutions. That's what PWI stands for those that don't know. But I'm interested as student leaders here, and if any one of you want to raise your hand, I can see you to see if you want to field this one first. If not, I'll put one of you on the spot. But I'm interested, how do we get out of the walls of our own student organizations, even within ECU's campus? So SAB is going to meet with SAB and ambassadors with their own and so forth and so on. Terrell's talking about uniting with other campuses, which is great. How do we get our student leaders and our other students within organizations to step out and even collaborate with each other? All right, and I'm going to go to Zoe first and then Lila right after that.
Okay, so I know I'm speaking with student media, but I am also involved in a service sorority on campus. And one small thing that we have done just to start, and I know it's kind of just tapping under the water, but maybe other organizations could also be a part of it and see what they can do. But my service sorority, ESA, Epsilon Sigma Alpha, we are a nonprofit, and everything that we raise, like we don't have a sorority house or anything on campus, because everything that we raise goes to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So all our volunteering, any fundraiser that we have, that could be bake sale or something that we've made, or a fun thing that we host on the mall, whatever it might be, everything goes not to a house or not to any funds that we might have, but it all goes to St. Jude's. And other ESAs with other universities also do the same thing. And one thing that I can't take credit for, but my board has worked really hard to get this approved with kind of the top tier of our sorority to see if we can donate to other places. And I believe that has been approved. So we are also able to, everything that we fundraise and donate, we're actually able to also pick one specific location. And I don't think that has been decided yet, but we as a sorority or a sisterhood have voted on which predominantly Black fundraising area we would like to donate to. And so that is one thing that we have done. So not only are we helping St. Jude's, which is pretty much what we are known for, but we have also, as a sisterhood, voted to also help other places as well. And I think that would be really great if other people can do their research or talk to their headquarters, see what has to be done, even if you have to agree with certain requirements or certain restrictions, like we can only focus on one other organization, but see what you can do and get your whole team on board, just like we did with the sisterhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Appreciate that. Lila, talk a little bit about SAB. Obviously, is very well known, gets seen in a lot of ways on campus. How do you create partnerships with some of these other student orgs to make some change happen?
Yeah, I think definitely this is the best time to be involved with everyone else on campus. Luckily, I'm able to be a part of this panel and meet and be introduced to really amazing leaders. It's definitely hard to reach out. I mean, it's easy to reach out, but it's hard to follow through and get the whole campus involved. So there's a lot more recognition when everyone else is behind it. So I think our first step to go back to campus is to actually feel united, to have all of us here and talk about the same things that worry us, whether it be from different sides of each spectrum of different backgrounds, perspectives. When we all come together, it's a beautiful thing to represent ECU. And knowingly all of us have gone through different things. So this year, I mean, when we had put out our statement, it had taken us a while to figure out what we really wanted to say. Like, what message do we really want to put out? And for me, I knew if I put out something that I didn't believe in, why would anyone else believe me? So it's starting from there and then creating events for SAB that helped educate and helped involve people from all different types of backgrounds to come in and say something. And if we don't allow a platform for everyone, then why let everyone speak? So.
Thank you, Lila. I appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, sorry, we lost you there for a second.
No, you're good. It was glitching out.
So one of the things that we've done a couple of these conversations. We did one with athletics, and Harold Varner, the PGA golfer, was a part of that conversation, and he said something very similar to what Lila just said, which was when all this was going on, he kind of got some criticism for not answering very quickly and not putting out a comment, and that he took some time to process and to think about what are the words that I want to say, what are the things that I want to say. And I do think that that's important, because too many times we do go straight to social media, or we go straight to that emoting of comments that come out, and then you either don't mean it or you have to back off of it, or whatever it would be. So I think there is some value in that. I do think, though, that we need to understand uncomfortable conversations need to be had for change to occur. And it may mean that organizations that have not typically worked together, I know probably 5 years ago, SGA and BSU didn't really have any kind of connection whatsoever. And I think there's been bridges that have started to be built, but I think that we can do more. And I think that's one of the things that we can focus on. So I want to ask this, AJ, I want to come to you with this question, but I'd like others to jump in as well. As student leaders, what is the expectation of university leadership? And what do you want university leadership to, what role do you want them to play in social and racial issues that would support change on our campus?
Of course. The biggest part of our campus is that we have free speech, and we want students to speak their minds, as Tucker alluded to earlier. No matter, if we per se disagree or disagree with that. The big part with that is working with Captain Sutton with the ECU Police and Dr. Eric Newble with student involvement and leadership. Their goals are to ensure that if students would like to have their voices heard by means of protest, that they can help them to safely do so in a spot on campus that will allow them to peacefully and appropriately speak their minds. You know, as leadership, students and university leaders have to work together in a way that allows them to understand each other, even if it's not in agreement. And that's always the biggest point. You know, I can tell you from working with Dr. Newell, he is a very open and understanding person, and he will listen to you and help you make your vision come to be.
Thank you, AJ. Tyrell, I want to come your way too, because I think it's important that a lot of folks think that access to leadership and administration is very easy, and at other schools it's not. I think our student leaders have a lot of access to our university leadership, and I wonder from your standpoint as a student leader, Tyrell, conversations that you either want to have or have had already, maybe with some of the administrators, about where you'd like to go.
Like you said, the access to these administrators are fairly easy. You know, they're welcoming us with open arms. I've actually had conversations with a couple of people, like Dr. Newble. I've talked to Dr. Turner, you know, Dr. Hardy. I've talked to all of them about, you know, just what BSU would like to do about this upcoming fall, because, you know, they're the biggest resource to us as students, the administrators. You know, they want to help us in so many ways and just ensure that, you know, everything that we want to do can happen according to plan. You know, me and Dr. Newble have had a couple conversations about, you know, doing this or doing that, and it's just, he's able to provide insight. You know, a lot of y'all are able to provide insight that, you know, and able to tell us, you know, how to go about things that we don't know as students ourselves. So, you know, it's a learning experience, you know, talking to administrators and, you know, learning, you know, how we should go about things when we're, especially coming back to campus and wanting to execute so many, you know, whether it be a protest, whether it be a meeting, you know, having to execute these things. You know, the administrators, they offer us that guidance to, you know, be able to carry out these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrell. I appreciate that a lot. Tucker, I want to come your way, and I see your hand was coming up too. But some may not know that you are a representative on the Board of Trustees. And so not only are you the student body president, but you have the ear of the Chancellor, of Vice Chancellor Hardy, of the Board of Trustees. Talk about some of those conversations that you have either had or need to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for pitching this my way. So this, I guess what I'm about to say will kind of trickle off the last question and go into this one. When we were talking about beyond campus, SGA has what's called the Association of Student Governments. That is every SGA represented in the UNC system. We have connection to all of them, all of their presidents, committee leaders, directors, and all things of that nature. And so that is kind of my tie to I guess North Carolina as a whole. To, you know, we've been having conversations, I'd say at least once, twice, sometimes even 3 or 4 times a week on the issues going across every campus. You know, this isn't just an ECU issue. This is a world issue. This is a United States and North Carolina issue. So that is kind of my connection. You know, it's good to hear, you know, what's happening out there in Western Carolina, what's happening in Charlotte, what's happening, you know, just very different, diverse places and towns, and getting to hear from their student leaders, their student body presidents. It just helps me out a lot to understand, you know, where ECU stands with what we have going on, you know, compared to other schools close to us. And so that leads me to my next point about the access to administrators here. Within the Association of Student Governments, I have come to find out that ECU administrators are outstanding. There are student body presidents across North Carolina that have trouble even getting in touch with their chancellors, vice chancellors, just different administrators that they may need to get in touch with. Our administration is amazing. I mean, I can get in touch with the chancellor within a day easily, if not an hour. People like Dr. Newble, I mean, Dr. Hardy, I have their cell phone numbers. They text me back whenever I text them. The access to administration here is absolutely incredible, and it makes my job easier. I know the other student leaders on this panel and on this campus can agree with me that it makes our jobs a lot easier. As far as the Board of Trustees, obviously we're doing all that virtual right now. I have not met any of the trustees in person, but I have several phone calls a week with them. Staying in touch with them. They want to stay in touch with me because they're worried, they want to hear what students are feeling, what students are saying on campus regarding our return to campus, and things of that nature. I'm also on the Chancellor Search Committee, so we're in the process of bringing a new chancellor into our university. This is a very pivotal time for ECU to bring in a new leader, and I'd just like to congratulate and commend Chancellor Mitchelson for his time as interim chancellor, and he's going to be in that role for another good bit, depending on when we bring in a new chancellor. I think he has done absolutely phenomenal in his role right now, and I'm sure he did not ask for for the timing of his chancellorship right now, but he's doing phenomenal. So the conversations around the trustees and things of that nature are going great. It's all virtual, all phone calls, but hopefully sooner than later I'll be able to sit down and have those meaningful, impactful conversations in person rather than on the phone. But I just want to hit on access to administration here is great. It's awesome. I couldn't ask for it to be any better. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. I appreciate that. We have a question that came into the Q&A, and this one will go to Tyrell and AJ specifically. The question, a lot of times people on Tyrell, if you don't mind going first on this one, then AJ, there it is. The question that came in was, a lot of times the focus is on right and wrong protesting. What should be this, what should be that? And this specific came in saying, how should white allies be doing a better job of supporting a march or a protest or a movement when they're not directly impacted? How can they be a better supporter to a movement like this?
While the center of, these movements are Black people, it's more than just a Black issue. It's a human rights issue. Any human being with, human empathy and, human, compassion would want to, you don't have to join in on the marches, while that would be appreciated, but, just speak out, use your voice, use your platform. In this country, I feel like white people's voice is more impactful than the black man's voice. When y'all say things and when y'all speak out, for us, it helps us. It takes that goes a long way. We actually need y'all support in order to get to where we want to go, because right now it's just, I don't think, as powerful as, we are, I don't think we can make this stride without, those allies by our side. So, just being an activist, with whether it be, marching, whether it be, speaking out, whether it be, putting out a statement, any little thing helps. Anything helps. Something is better than nothing. So, just use your platform, use whatever it is to just, be the best ally that you can be. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't do anything that's out of your control. Just do the best that you can, yourself, to help, Black people like during these times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. AJ?
Yeah, I completely agree with Tyrell. Everything he says is very important. There is no right way. There is no wrong way to protest. Each person comes to that conclusion in their own. You have a group of people who necessarily might not want to get out there and protest in the streets with Black people. So that's when you can use your social media platform. You can use your voice to share the information and to share the message that we are trying to get out there. And, this issue has occurred for a long time, and it goes beyond George Floyd, and it goes beyond murder. So I endorse you to educate yourself. Many of your instructors and professors and faculty members have taught you how to find scholarly sources. Use the resources provided at the library to find these scholarly sources. I can recommend a book. There's a book called Pickin' Cotton. It talks about a wrongful death of an African-American man. I'm sorry, it wasn't a death. He was arrested for, I believe, raping a lady, or who she thought was his rapist, but it wasn't, all because he was Black. And it actually happened here in the state of North Carolina. He was released, but I really encourage you to read that book because it has a lot of historical information.
Yeah, and actually, that was a pirate read from a couple of years back that was right here on this campus. So that's a fantastic point. And I think one of the things that in any kind of way, if there's something that you don't feel you understand and education is one of the greatest things that you can do. Go find it. Go learn something about it. It doesn't matter what it is or what the topic is. If you're unfamiliar, either talk to people who are in the know or go do some of your homework on your own. I want to switch gears a little bit. Zoe, I'm coming your way with this one, but a couple of folks in their opening statement made reference to the media and media coverage. But I'm putting this to Zoe because she's a member of the media, but I also want our other panelists to chime in too. A lot of times the role of the media can be covering an event. Could be covering a march, could be covering a protest, could be a riot, could be a statue coming down, whatever it would be. It's covering something in the moment. That is part of the news coverage. What do you think is the role of the media when it comes to making change? Tyrell said a little while ago, the narrative hadn't changed. 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the narrative hasn't changed. What can the role of the media be to help this narrative and this topic and change a little bit?
Of course. That's a great question. So the media, I know, can get people stressed, can make people happy. It's kind of that teeter-totter balance beam. Sometimes it could be hectic. But being with the media, sometimes you kind of want, I do have to say a couple things. One, you have to pick and choose what you want to listen to and what you don't want to listen to sometimes. Not saying to ignore things that are on the media, but sometimes things that you might disagree with might agree with, whatever it might be. Pick and choose what you're going to listen to and how you're going to take it in. With that being said, with positive change, because other people are being violent doesn't mean that you have to be violent. But it does mean that you could make a change. Use the media to almost inspire you and help you create your opinions, but within that you can also create your own opinions. I think with going on with change, at least personally, reading a hard news article online or a newspaper or something, that's going to give you the hard facts, the date and the time and what happened. And those are all key important facts. Those are things that everyone has to know. But when going to what you said, your second half of the question about actually creating change, personally for me, I find those more in Facebook posts that someone posted about their day, or sidewalk art that someone wanted to create, or a video clip that someone sent in of a elderly person meeting their grandkids for the first time because of COVID or something like that. And I know that we're focusing primarily on Black Lives Matter right now, but with social media and with what Tyrell and AJ said, use your platform, and it doesn't have to be hard factual news like what the reporters are doing, or CNN or ABC or anything like that. It could be as simple, you wanted to make a mural on the sidewalk, even if it was at your own house, and share it. I know I'm in a couple of different organizations at school, and we're talking about ways that we can socially, using social distance, ways that we can still put that into campus. So what can we do? Well, we can do signs, and we can do sidewalk art, and we can post that online and we can share it with somebody. We could create a video, all these different media effects that are different than hard news, but still media, still there, and in a way could be more, could make someone feel more inspired to create change than just a regular news article. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Zoe. And I want to come, Lila, I think has a comment on this too, but I think part for her and for Tucker, you all do a lot of programming, campus-wide programming, and using all types of different media. She talked about social media and other programs and type things. Talk about how your outreach, and feel free to jump into the last part of that question too regarding the media. But our students consume media in so many different ways nowadays. It's just a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, to go off of what Zoe had said, I also think that the media is such a powerful, beautiful tool. It's something that you're able to express different sides of your life and kind of advocate for different communities that you necessarily won't interact with. It's this form of like connectiveness that you don't really get just walking through life. But I think there's also, especially now, it's a heavy time to be on social media. So to kind of go off of mental health, I mean, it's definitely normalized to step off of social media sometimes and take the time to really collect your thoughts and sit back and educate yourself. So you've created your opinion, like what had Zoe said, is you inspire yourself. You take a thought, you take a perspective, you take a second, look back, and you really analyze what are you really feeling without anyone else and without anyone else's bias or perspective kind of hoarding your brain, and then you sit back and you're like, what article can I read? Who can I talk to help better myself? So when I'm asked these questions, I'm capable of saying, well, I've read this. I don't know whether or not, but I'm not sure if there's anything else that I do need to read, and I'm okay knowing that I might not know that answer. So that's definitely another side point of where social media could definitely not be the best thing. But how social media can help definitely is I'm a firm believer in art is very powerful, whether it's through photography, through film. Those are the aspects of media where people really pay attention to. I mean, you put words on a screen and people kind of just skim through. But when you see a really powerful photo, when you see a really powerful video that gets surfaced and is trending, that's when really people pay attention. So it's time to be mindful of what type of content you're putting out into the world. And how does this message portray to everyone else, and is it harmful? So. That's kind of my spiel.
Thanks. Tucker?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Stansberry. Yeah, you mentioned, and I totally agree with what Lila said about sometimes you need a break from social media. I mean, I'll be honest, I love going through social media, checking things out. But, like Lila alluded to, mental health is a thing. I think it's very prominent when it comes to social media. Sometimes I get these daily reports telling me how much time I've spent on my phone like every week, and I'm like, wow, like I spent that much time looking at my screen. And so I think that be mindful, by all means, scroll through social media, but sometimes, if you're feeling down or feeling depressed or things of that nature from social media, I think it's time to step away and, do something else to take your mind off of it. As far as outreach and stuff, technology capabilities today are amazing. The things that you can do with technology, how we're conducting this meeting right now is awesome. And I think there's no denying that. A few things that, that I've personally done this summer using technology and using media outreach is I collaborated with the NC State student body president for a video, condemning systemic racism on our campuses. That video to this day has reached almost 100,000 views on various platforms. A lot of great comments. A lot of great feedback, and leading off of that, something else that media has, given me was connection to other people. I've had people from BSU at NC State, other organizations from just that video, and even people on ECU's campus from the NAACP. I've had them message me. We've connected. We've had phone calls. We've had conversations. it's really led me to, I guess, broaden my community. And I think that message really resonated with some people. And I think some people really appreciated that. So it's connected me with so many other people to figure out how I can, be more of assistance or, be a part of this movement and this and be in support of this. So I'm a fan of the media, big fan of it. I just think sometimes, it's okay to take a break from it.
Thank you, Tucker. I appreciate that. I want to throw this open to everybody. I'd like to hear from everybody. I'm going to start with Tyrell in this and kind of keep it as succinct as you can, just so that we can get through to everybody. But we've already just started to see the campaign ads for this upcoming election. We've already started to see how certain sides of the aisle are going at certain topics in certain areas. And I'm interested to see or hear your perspective. How do you think, Tyrell, starting with you, how do you think race is going to play, and is it going to be a significant topic in this upcoming presidential election?
Thank you. Yeah, I believe race is definitely going to be a big, factor in this presidential election. The main thing being that, I feel like, this election is going to have a lot more of the Black vote than, we're accustomed to seeing. A lot of, I've seen a lot of conversations, happening on social media, even within smaller groups, like within my org, within my friend groups, where, the voting is like one of the #1 topics that's constantly brought up. If we want to see these changes, it starts with voting, because, the higher ups, the government, they're the ones, controlling, everything that's going on. So if we want to see change, we have to elect who we want to see, in that position. And with this presidential election, I feel like race is actually going to be, it might end up being the determining factor of what happens during this presidential election, because, the Black vote is going to be, very present, for the simple fact of getting someone out of office. So yeah, I feel like race is really going to be very powerful in this presidential election.
Thank you, Tyrell. AJ, I want to come to you next, and I'm going to kind of tweak that just a bit to say, is there any concern that we will lose the important message about systemic racism in the midst of election and political campaigning? Are the politicians going to use that as a tool, but at the same time, we might lose the message that needs to be heard? Does that make sense?
I think I got what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I really believe that when attacking systematic racism, whoever is elected into the top tier, the president's office, is the person who is going to be enforcing the law. I think we really need to make sure that we are paying attention, not only in the 2020 election, but also in the 2022 election, when you're starting to vote a lot more of your state senators, your state representatives who are in the legislative sector, who are there primarily to help make the law and make changes amongst the law. Systematic racism is not something that is just amongst the police. Systematic racism can go anywhere from the hospital, believing whether or not African Americans are in pain, how they, are they making it up? It can just so many areas. So make sure that you ask your representatives or people who are running for these offices, educate yourself on them. What they're platforming before you go to cast your ballot in November.
Excellent, AJ. Thank you for that. And I stumbled through the question and you handled it just nicely. Well done. Lila, I'm interested from your perspective. A lot of programming that SAB does is also trying to get students to go and do exactly what Tyrell said, which is go vote. Talk about why that's so important from an SAB perspective, just not necessarily, it was to go vote for SGA, but it was also, in those elections coming up. Why is that so important for SAB too, to get the students' voice heard?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what AJ had said, but there's also, we have to give them the opportunity to learn these things. I know school is stressful. I mean, there's a lot of different factors of being a student. I mean, you could also be a grad student. We have different untraditional paths people are on at our school. So making sure that we provide voter education, whether that's through a class, whether that's through like a big meeting of some sort, of where we collectively as student leaders get together with the media at ECU and say that we are hosting events primarily for you to be educated, so you know exactly what you're getting into when you go vote, and then also be able to understand the systematic oppression and where that lies in relation to you and who you represent and your identity itself. So me as a minority woman, how can I be well represented in, whether it be in the government or just in my local area, or like trying to get people involved and making sure that they understand what oppresses me and what's oppressing other people, and how are we going to go about changing that. But hopefully this upcoming year, we definitely have a lot more opportunities for people to learn and educate and kind of just get to know one another.
Thank you. Tucker?
Yes, sir. So I'm totally in agreement with what has been said so far. AJ, you brought up a great point. I think that this election year is going to be the biggest voter turnout I think that we have ever seen. I wish it didn't take a movement like this for that to be the case. I wish everyone would go out and vote. I think that is your, most influence of change is the power of that ballot that you cast in November. So I think along with that is that, ultimately these politicians want your vote. That is one of their number one priorities, if you ask me. I think something important to know is to hear their platform. Really process it. Don't just say, oh, he's going to do this. Great. No, think about it. Really understand what these, politicians and elected officials are saying. Some people will agree, some people disagree, some people in the middle. I think the most important part is to listen to them, process what they're saying they're going to do, and then, come to your own conclusion of whether or not you agree with that. I know within SGA, we have what's called our Local and State Affairs Committee. And this year is going to be a great time for that committee to really shine and really bring some people on campus, hopefully, and really, get all sides of the spectrum and hear people out, hear these elected officials and hear what they have to say, and also just get educated on voter registration and things of that nature. So, yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Zoe, I want to come to you real quick. About 30 seconds or so. Talk a little bit about how, as media, as reporters, as student journalists, as students that are going to be working on things, and we've got everything from systemic racism to COVID to an election coming up. 2020 has just been a whale of a year already, and we're not even but halfway through. What is the approach for student journalists as you consider race as an important part of this election process? Kind of talk a little bit about that from your perspective, if you don't mind.
Oh, definitely. So journalism.
Oh, Zoe, I think we lost you real quick. I think you went to mute by accident somehow.
Am I back?
There you go.
Okay. I don't know what happened. But continuing where I left off, journalism is a part of everything. Sometimes I even forget how much it's a part of everything. There's a road closed, you found that from somewhere, whether it be the radio, which is also a form of journalism, it's broadcast, or if it's actually an article that you read, or something else that you've seen online or something like that. I can't speak so much for the East Carolinian, which is our newspaper on campus. We have an editor, Chloe Easton, who is in charge of that, and she's doing awesome. And I don't want to speak too much for her, but being magazine department general manager, I know that we've started to have conversations on how we're going to change our articles, what we're going to do, what we're going to incorporate, and different angles that we're going to take on different viewpoints. With COVID, news normally covers, like I said, the hard facts, but in a magazine, you can be more, for lack of a better term, relax. But how are we going to change that angle? How are we going to make it look? What are we going to focus on? One thing that we've also had conversations about is how we're going to make it more interactive. And I think that's a big thing for news in general nowadays with voting or with COVID or Black Lives Matter or anything else coming up, school systems and concerns. How are you going to take what you are putting online on the internet, and how are you going to make it interactive, whether it be a poll that you're going to do, or if you're going to include a link, or if you're going to include a Zoom meeting or something else, something to get people interactive. And I think that's a big thing in general, because it's one thing, so someone said earlier, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember who said it, but it's one thing to say that you're going to do it, and then it's a lot harder to actually go through with it. And I think making everything through media interactive in a way, sharing those posts, and if you need to take a break at times, but with voting and everything coming up, making something interactive, making something where you could click the link or telling someone exactly where to go, or if there is a something coming up, a discussion, go and attend it, go voter education, go figure it out, and having someone there to cover it. That way we can just kind of mend the circle. First you have to be first you find out about it through media in some way, go and get educated about it, and then spread the word so others can learn about it, and then it'll just continue, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoe. So wanted to start to wrap up here. We're a few minutes before the top of the hour. We had a question that came in. It kind of ties in nicely to where we were going with this conversation. I want to start with AJ on this one, and then I'm going to work my way through, and I want everybody to kind of weigh in. At times, ECU appears to be a very diverse campus. At times, we seem to be a very divided campus when it comes to certain topics and certain issues. So AJ, starting with you, how do we take this beyond a conversation that happens in the summer and actually do something with this? How do we make action occur? What action needs to occur? What things need to happen as we get into the fall semester for this conversation to take a step forward?
Of course, we definitely don't want this conversation to stop. A lot of people can feel that this is such a large platform that we're doing here that they're nervous to ask questions. So take the time to, find someone who's educated, or, come to one of us, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have had that you thought of over the summer. Coming into the fall, if you have any questions, we're all one pirate nation, no matter what divides us. I really think that it's going to be a big thing that we're going to have to agree to disagree at times. We all come from different backgrounds, and we have various ideologies. As I said before, I am the president of the Ecu Ambassadors, which is one of the largest, most diverse student organizations on ECU's campus, and so many different walks of life. But we come together weekly and have that family feeling. And as an institution, we need to make sure that we're expressing that family feeling.
Thank you, AJ. Tyrell, for you, same kind of question, but I also want to know too, what is it you're looking for to see happen in the semester, in the fall semester, to know that this narrative has not hit a pause?
But one thing I would like to encourage, being at the PWI, I feel like a lot of the people at ECU are just, so out of touch with everything that's going on, because a lot of people at ECU aren't directly affected by the Black Lives Matter movement. They're not directly affected by, systemic racism, so they're out of touch with it. They don't really know too much about it. They don't know, how people have been affected by it. So one thing I will encourage is to just, educate yourself, on, things that's going on. And while the media is a very powerful tool that you could look to educate yourself, the thing with the media, that the media does control the narrative. So, you look at things on the media and they are what they appear to be, but the media can sometimes not show you the full picture. I remember, watching the media for the past couple of weeks, and when the protests first started happening, and the majority of what I was seeing was loots or riots. You weren't seeing the peaceful protests as much as you were seeing the other stuff. So, and if you did see the peaceful protests, it was bombarded by tear gas and the police, acting out to these peaceful protests. So, I feel like a lot of movements in general aren't being shown. So, you see this violence, and a lot of people start to think that that's what the Black Lives Matter movement represents, which is not. We don't represent that. That's just what the media is showing you. So I encourage people to not only educate yourself, but, I feel like us as leaders, we have to make relationships with each other first before we can try to, collab with each other. Because, I don't know about you guys, but me personally, it's hard to follow through with, working with somebody when you don't know either that person or that organization. So, familiarize yourself with that organization, with those people, and support those people. Don't just, wait until the time where you have to collab. Support them through their individual events, and they'll return their support. So I feel like, making these relationships, educating yourself on both sides. I feel like Black people as well have to educate themselves on, white people's perspective on things, why they think the things they do. They have to understand these things so that they can, be a resource themselves, as far as educating people who don't know these things. So, just making relationships with each other, making relationships with the faculty, the administrators, that's a very, powerful starting point to, making change, because once we form relationships with each other, our members are going to follow and suit. Thank you.
Thank you. Lila?
Yeah, to go off of what Tyrell had said is, I would love to work with everyone on campus, but I also want to make sure we're all putting the right unified message across. And whether that is, we're all here to help support you, regardless of what stance that you're on, but we're also here not to harm, to be hateful, to also educate ourselves so we understand where everyone else is coming from. I hate the idea that this is the time of working together just because we're going through these things. I wish this was also going on before all of this had happened, but definitely when school comes back around, I think it's going to be a really cool time to see everyone back on campus or in any form of campus, whether that's virtual or on campus itself, but to see each other from different parts, just kind of understanding where all of us come from, and just going about going to ECU. I mean, I think we all have something in common, especially being on campus. We're all students in some sense, or we're all learning. So it's hard to divide ourselves when we have things in common.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Zoe, I'd like to get your opinion. What would you like to see when you come back to know that meaningful change is going on?
Yeah, I would love to just see more of just positive engagement with everybody. I'm involved in a couple of organizations, Student Media being one of them, but I also help give tours around campus. If anyone's seen me before, I'm also in a scholarship group on campus where we talk every month about things that we can do on campus and in the resident halls, as well as being with media, different organizations within campus. And I think if you're not kind of touching what we said earlier, if you can definitely use your platform, but that platform doesn't always have to necessarily be media. Ironically that I'm saying that because I'm with the media, but it could be simply just hanging out with someone. I know it's probably going to be social distance now, but hanging out with someone that is different than you. when you go to vote, if you by chance don't have a preference, think of your friends, think of your peers, think about other people, kind of using yourself in a way to help others. If there's something that you can do, if you could stand up for somebody, if you know an organization that can partner with another organization, do it. That would be amazing. I know we've partnered with each other. Different organizations have partnered with each other in the past for different things like Barefoot on the Mall or Get a Clue. I don't see why we can't do that for something kind of bigger than us. Something that we can do for the Black Lives Matter or something else, and we can do just a big campus-wide kind of collaboration on something. And it doesn't have to be too political or like a big production. It could be more visual in a way. Going back, hopefully some of you guys have seen on campus, but the Big Shoes event that has been on campus before. That is to bring awareness to mental health. And I absolutely love that event. I used to cover it when I was back being a reporter. And that had nothing to do with pretty much any words, nothing like that. It was just shoes scattered around the mall. And each shoe represented someone that was going through mental health situations. So I think something like that, to be creative around campus, to not stop doing what you're doing, talk to your peers. AJ said earlier, agree to disagree, even if you need to sit down and have those conversations privately with a peer or a mentor or a family member. The more that we talk, the more that we continue to be creative, the more that we kind of make our own news in a way. That would be really great for others to see that too, even if it's not going to be broadcasted on news or something like that. At least maybe that person sitting in the mall might see you talking with someone that looks different than you, and then that'll stay with them. Even if it's not posted anywhere, broadcasted, they'll make a mental note and be like, that's really great that ECU is continuing to do that. I know when I came to tour ECU, that was something that stood out to me when I was picking out a college, and I really loved the diversity. So what you do around campus might not seem like much, but it's going to mean something to someone else that might see you.
Thank you, Zoe. Tucker, I know one of the, I teed you up last intentionally because I know coming up July 21st, SGA has a town hall. That's one of the ways SGA is going to keep the conversation going. Talk a little bit about that, but also as the SGA student body president, what are you looking for this fall as well?
Thank you, Mr. Stansberry. As he mentioned, student government does have a town hall coming up next Tuesday at 1 o'clock on Facebook Live. This will be our second version of that town hall. The first one that we had was kind of the initial conversations after ECU had released their Return to Pirate Nation plan. It was mostly on the impact of COVID-19 on our return to campus. Got a lot of great questions. I think that video is still being referenced on Facebook for parents and families that are coming into ECU, have children coming to ECU, and it's still being referenced, and we're having another one next Tuesday with the following campus areas represented. It'll be campus facilities, housing, advising, and student involvement. This is just another way of keeping this conversation going. While this one will be mostly directed towards, how will things change on campus, it's still important to have conversations ongoing, leading up to our return on August 10th, because there's so much uncertainty. There's been several times this summer where I was like, oh, are we coming back to campus? Are we not? Somebody give me an answer. So this is kind of, I guess, the thought process behind it. But as far as what I would like to see happen on our campus, I couldn't agree with Zoe anymore. Coming together and not dividing each other is something huge that Pirate Nation needs to understand and needs to be a part of. And, I also would like to see that the Office of Equity and Diversity, I'd like to see people in there constantly, learning from people in that office, and also the office in the bottom of the student center, the cultural center. I took a tour of that last year, and I learned so much new stuff just from that facility right here on our campus than anywhere else, honestly. It's a great place to take a tour through. The people in there will be glad to take you through there. And also, I've learned just from being in student government for a couple months now, people from different backgrounds, when you have them looking at a certain issue, a certain topic, you get so many different angles, different aspects, different opinions that go into that. And you really get to feed off of each other. And, as a leader, myself, a student leader, it helps me to see all the perspectives, to see all the different backgrounds looking in on a certain topic. So I really encourage you all to step out of your comfort zone a little bit, and engage in conversations and social settings, obviously following guidelines, but with people that are different than you, and have those hard conversations. Some of them are hard, some of them are difficult, but just like this one today, I mean, we've stepped up and decided to talk about a difficult topic, and I think it just builds each other up, and I think dividing each other in Pirate Nation is the last thing that we need coming back to campus. So yeah, please tune in to that live session next Tuesday.
Thank you, Tucker. I appreciate that a lot. I thank you, everybody. I want to thank our panel, Tucker, Tyrell, Zoe, Lila, AJ. Thank you all very much, A, for your time, B, for your leadership. You as student leaders are planting seeds in the garden that I just see it's going to flourish in the years to come. And we're going to look back at 2020 as maybe a year that has had a lot of things go wrong in it. But I think we're also going to see out of our student leaders the foundation of a lot of things that were right. And so I think, doing nothing's going to happen. We have to find a way to do something and make change and make positive change, influence change in our community and on our campus. To our more than 100 folks that participated today, attended today, thank you all very much for being a part of this. Stay tuned. There's going to be more Cupola Conversations that come up in the summer, and as we go into the fall and get closer into the election period, we'll have even more of these conversations. So thank you again to our panelists. Hope everybody stays safe. We look forward to seeing you on August 10th back on campus. Take care, everybody.